I gasped, sitting bolt upright in my bed. Sunlight streamed through familiar windows, and my heart pounded with impossible memories. A knife's sharp pain, Vivian's twisted face, the darkness closing in. It had all felt so real. "Lily, darling, time to get ready." Mother's voice called from downstairs. "The car will be here soon to take you to Huntington Manor." My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. The date showed exactly what I feared and hoped for. The morning of the contest's first day. Somehow, impossibly, I'd return to the beginning. This time, I would be ready for Vivian. I stood on trembling legs, my mind reeling with memories of what was to come. Or what had already happened? The marble floors of Huntington Manor. 50 women competing for Alexander Huntington's hand. My sister's schemes and ultimate betrayal. It all rushed back like a tide. But this time would be different. This time, I wouldn't be the frightened mouse who let everyone walk over her. I pulled out a stunning emerald dress I'd hidden in the back of my closet the first time around. Too afraid to wear something so bold. Not anymore. The marble floors of Huntington Manor gleamed under crystal chandeliers as I stood among 50 other women, all hoping to catch the eye of Alexander Huntington, heir to the Huntington fortune. His grandfather, Lord Edmund Huntington, stood at the front of the grand ballroom, his voice booming across the crowd. "Welcome, ladies. Over the next month, you will face tests of intelligence, grace, character, and loyalty. Only one shall prove worthy of joining our family." I smoothed my emerald dress, standing straighter than I had the first time. Beside me, my sister Vivian preened in her designer gown, diamond earrings catching the light. "Isn't this exciting, Lily?" she whispered, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Though I do hope you won't embarrass our family name." The memory hit me like a physical blow, her voice saying the exact same words in my previous life, followed by 30 days of sabotage and humiliation. "I won't," I interrupted quietly, my voice stronger than she expected. "But thank you for your concern, sister." Her perfectly plucked eyebrows rose in surprise at my confident tone. This wasn't the timid Lily she was used to manipulating. When Alexander Huntington's piercing blue gaze swept the room, it lingered on me for a long moment. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Interest? I couldn't tell, but it sent warmth spreading through my chest. Had he looked at me that way before? I'd been too nervous to notice the first time around. 3 days into the contest, we faced our first challenge: etiquette and proper protocol. I'd spent the previous evening in the library, organizing study materials and helping other contestants prepare, a stark contrast to my first attempt, when I'd hidden in my room, too intimidated to reach out. "I've prepared comprehensive notes on dinner protocols and forms of address," I announced to the group. "Anyone who wants to review them is welcome to join me." Several contestants accepted gratefully. Vivian's smile tightened as she watched me take charge. "So, how generous of you, Lily," she said through gritted teeth, then caught herself and forced her usual sweet expression. "Though I do hope you haven't made any mistakes. You know how you sometimes get things muddled." I remembered this moment. Last time, her casual cruelty had made me doubt myself. Not anymore. "I'm quite confident in my research," I replied calmly. Cambridge did teach me proper study methods, after all. When she tried to spill wine on my notes later that evening, I was ready. "Oh no!" I gasped, quickly moving my papers as red wine splashed across the table, where they'd been moments before. Thank goodness I moved those in time. "Are you all right, Vivian? You seem a bit unsteady." "I'm fine," she snapped, then caught herself and forced a sweet smile. "Just clumsy me." A memory of my ruined notes from the first timeline made my chest tight with old anger, but I pushed it aside. This time, I was in control. The next day, Lady Catherine announced the results in the dining hall. "Miss Lily demonstrated exceptional knowledge and poise," she declared, her sharp gaze approving. "Her understanding of protocol was flawless, and she showed admirable leadership in helping her fellow contestants prepare. Alexander caught my eye across the room and nodded approvingly. There was something in his expression. Pride? Admiration? It made my heart skip. Miss Vivian also performed well, Lady Catherine continued, though I noticed some hesitation in her responses. I hid a smile. Without my help this time, Vivian had stumbled through several questions about proper forms of address. By day 10, the field had narrowed to 30 contestants. I'd announced my charity auction plans early, speaking clearly so everyone could hear about my work with St. Margaret's Orphanage. But I was going to organize something for the orphans, Vivian protested, her mask slipping slightly. I remembered her stealing my idea, taking credit for weeks of my planning. The memories still stung. Were you? How wonderful that we had the same idea. I smiled pleasantly. Perhaps you could help with decorations. I know how much you enjoy making things look pretty. The backhanded compliment hit its mark. Several contestants chuckled, and I saw Alexander hide a smile behind his teacup. That evening, he approached me on the terrace, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. "Impressive work with the auction planning," he said, offering me a glass. "The orphanage director spoke very highly of your dedication." "Thank you. The children there mean a lot to me." In my previous life, this conversation had gone so differently. I'd been tongue-tied, overwhelmed by his presence. When he'd complimented my charity work then, I'd mumbled something about it being nothing special, because Vivian had spent weeks convincing me that my volunteer work was just me playing with children to avoid real responsibilities. "You seem different tonight," Alexander observed, his blue eyes studying my face. "More confident. I suppose I'm finally learning to speak up for myself." If only he knew how literally true that was. In my first life, by this point, Vivian had already begun her systematic destruction of my self-worth. Every small success I'd had, she'd tainted with her poison. A sharp memory surfaced. The morning after my charity auction announcement in the previous timeline. I'd woken up excited, only to find Vivian in my room with a newspaper. "Oh, Lily," she'd said with false sympathy, "I'm so sorry you have to see this." The society page had featured a small article about the contest, but somehow it painted my charity work in the worst possible light. "Miss Lily appears to be using the orphanage for publicity," it had read. A calculated move to appear caring while actually exploiting vulnerable children for personal gain. I'd been devastated, especially when other contestants began whispering about it. Only later did I realize Vivian must have fed that story to the press herself. The writing style was too similar to her own cruel observations. "Lily?" Alexander's voice brought me back to the present. "You looked lost in thought." "Just remembering something unpleasant. But it doesn't matter now." The intelligence test on day 18 brought back sharp memories of humiliation and betrayal. This time, I submitted my exam directly to Lord Huntington himself, with Alexander as witness. The memory of my first timeline's disaster was still fresh and painful. I'd studied for weeks, confident in my knowledge. When the results were announced, Lord Huntington had held up papers covered in wrong answers, my name clearly written at the top. "I'm afraid Lily's scores were disappointing," he'd said, while I stood there in shock. "It seems she lacks the intellectual capacity we require." The humiliation had been crushing, especially when Vivian had whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Don't feel bad, sister dear. Not everyone can be naturally gifted like some people." But that night, I'd been too upset to sleep. I'd wandered the halls and overheard Vivian on the phone in the library. Yes, the handwriting practice paid off. Her signature was surprisingly easy to forge. No, she'll never think to check. She's too crushed to fight back now. I'd confronted her the next morning, showing her my real exam papers that I'd kept copies of. She'd laughed in my face. "Who's going to believe you, Lily? Everyone already thinks you're a failure." Besides, her smile had turned vicious. "I have so many other ways to destroy you if you try to expose me." And she had. The sabotage only escalated from there. "Excellent work, Miss Lily. Lord Huntington announced the next day. Your scores were among the highest we've ever recorded. Vivian's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as polite applause filled the room. This time she couldn't steal my achievement. Congratulations, sister, she said through clenched teeth after the announcement. I'm so proud. Thank you, Vivian. Your support means everything to me. In my previous life, this was when she'd cornered me with her most devastating attack. She'd waited until I was at my lowest point, crushed by the exam humiliation and feeling utterly defeated. You know, Lily, she'd said, finding me crying in the garden. I've been thinking about why you really volunteer at that orphanage. What do you mean? It's because you see yourself in those broken children, isn't it? The abandoned ones, the damaged ones. You think if you save them, somehow it'll make up for being such a disappointment yourself. Her words had cut deep because part of me had wondered the same thing. But here's what's really pathetic, she'd continued. You actually think someone like Alexander Huntington could love someone like you? A girl who couldn't even handle her father's death without falling apart? A girl who needed therapy just to function? A girl so weak that her own sister has to constantly cover for her mistakes. Each word had been a knife, precisely aimed at my deepest insecurities. Do you want to know what the other contestants say about you when you're not around? They call you Broken Lily. They think you're here because you're too damaged for anyone else to want. I'd believed her. God help me, I'd actually believed her lies. That evening she found me in the library. You're different, she said without preamble, dropping her sweet facade entirely. What happened to the pathetic little mouse I used to know? Maybe she finally learned to roar. Her eyes flashed with something dangerous. This isn't over, Lily. You may have gotten lucky so far, but I know things about you that could destroy your chances. Things about why you really started volunteering at that orphanage. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Oh, sweet sister. Did you really think no one would find out about your little breakdown? The real reason you took a year off from university? The psychiatrist visits? The medication? She knew about my depression, about the dark period after Father's death when I could barely get out of bed. I'd hidden it so carefully, but somehow she'd found out. The Huntingtons wouldn't want damaged goods, would they? Her smile was cruel. Especially not for their precious heir. You're bluffing. Am I? I have medical records, Lily. Photos of you leaving Dr. Morrison's office. Bank statements showing payments to the clinic. She leaned closer. Drop out now, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how unstable you really are. This was new. She hadn't had this ammunition in my previous life. Or maybe she had, and I'd been too broken to remember everything clearly. You have 24 hours to announce your withdrawal, she continued, her voice sickeningly sweet again. I'd hate for things to get unpleasant. That night, I couldn't sleep. Vivian's threats echoed in my mind, mixing with memories of the previous timeline. Had she always known about my struggles with depression? Had she been waiting for the perfect moment to use it against me? A soft knock on my door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Lily, it's Alexander. May I come in? I quickly threw on a robe and opened the door. He stood in the hallway, still dressed but looking concerned. I saw your light on. Is everything all right? I started to lie, to give him some polite excuse, but the words died in my throat. I was so tired of pretending everything was fine. No, it's not. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. What's wrong? Vivian found out about my depression, about the year I took off from university after my father died. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. She's threatening to expose everything unless I withdraw from the contest. Alexander's expression darkened. She what? She has medical records, photos, bank statements. She says the family wouldn't want someone damaged. Stop. His voice was firm, but gentle. He took my hands in his warmth steadying me. Listen to me very carefully. There is nothing wrong with seeking help when you're struggling. Your father's death was devastating. And the fact that you got the support you needed shows strength, not weakness. But if everyone finds out, then they'll know that you're human, that you faced real challenges, and overcome them. His thumbs brushed across my knuckles. Do you know why I really noticed you at the orphanage that day? I shook my head. It wasn't just your kindness with Emma. It was the way you handled one of the older boys, Marcus. He was having a panic attack. Remembering his mother's death, instead of calling for help or backing away, you sat with him. You talked him through breathing exercises, shared your own experience with grief and loss. You turned your pain into something that could help someone else. I remembered that day. Marcus had reminded me so much of myself in those dark months after Father's funeral. That's when I knew, Alexander continued softly. That's when I realized I was falling in love with you. My breath caught. You were already in love with me? Before the contest? He smiled ruefully. Completely. This whole elaborate competition, it's mostly for show. To satisfy the board members and extended family who think I should marry within certain social circles. But I'd already made my choice months ago. Then, why didn't you just ask me out? Why go through all this? Because I wanted to be sure you felt the same way. And because... He looked almost embarrassed. I was terrified you'd reject me. You were so genuine, so different from the women in my usual social circle. I wasn't sure someone like you could love someone like me. I stared at him in amazement. All this time, all this competition, and he'd already chosen me? So Vivian's threats are meaningless. She can release whatever information she wants. It won't change anything. His hands cupped my face gently. Nothing could change how I feel about you. A new memory surfaced, not from my previous life, but from earlier in this timeline. The way he'd looked at me during the etiquette challenge, the pride in his eyes during the charity auction announcement. He hadn't been evaluating me as a contestant. He'd been watching the woman he loved succeed. The next morning brought day 25, and I woke with new resolve. Vivian had played her hand, but Alexander's words had given me strength. When she cornered me before the final challenge, her usual sweet mask firmly in place, I was ready. I need to speak with you, she said, her voice carrying false concern for any nearby listeners. Of course, sister, what's on your mind? Have you made your decision about our conversation last night? I have. I smiled calmly. I've decided to stay in the contest. Her facade cracked slightly. That would be very unwise, Lily. You know what I'm capable of. Yes, I said quietly. I do know what you're capable of. The question is, do you know what you're up against now? Something in my tone made her pause. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across her features. What do you mean? I mean that I'm not the same frightened girl you've been manipulating our entire lives. And I think it's time everyone else saw the real Vivian too. That evening, as the contestants gathered for dinner, Vivian made her move. She stood gracefully, glass in hand, her smile radiant as she commanded the room's attention. I have something important to share with everyone, she announced, her voice carrying perfectly across the dining hall. It's about my dear sister Lily. Here it comes, I thought, my heart hammering. Just like I expected. As much as it pains me to say this, I feel it's my duty to reveal some troubling information about her mental health history. Gasps echoed around the room. Several contestants looked shocked. Others seemed eager for drama. Lord Huntington's eyebrows rose, while Alexander's expression remained carefully neutral. You see, Vivian continued, clearly enjoying her moment, Lily has been hiding a rather serious history of mental instability, depression, psychiatric treatment, medication. That's enough. The commanding voice came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, the head of household staff, stood in the doorway. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were Dr. Morrison, my former therapist, Mrs. Henderson from the orphanage, and several other people I recognized, but couldn't immediately place. This wasn't how it happened before. What was going on? Mrs. Whitmore? Lord Huntington looked confused. What's the meaning of this interruption? My apologies, sir, but there are some things this room needs to know about Miss Vivian's methods. Mrs. Whitmore's voice was ice cold. Dr. Morrison, Would you please explain how Miss Vivian obtained confidential medical records? Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his face grim. Miss Vivian bribed my former receptionist to provide copies of Miss Lily's files. It's a serious breach of patient confidentiality and highly illegal. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Vivian's face went white. Furthermore, Mrs. Anderson added, Miss Vivian has been spreading malicious rumors about Miss Lily's volunteer work, claiming she was only helping at the orphanage to improve her public image. The children adore Miss Lily. She's been reading to them every week for over a year, long before this contest was even announced. But that's not all, said another voice. A young woman stepped forward, someone I recognized as a former classmate. I'm Sarah Mitchell from the Cambridge Tribune. Miss Vivian contacted me last week, offering to pay for a story about her sister's scandalous past. When I refused, she threatened to ruin my career. Alexander had orchestrated this. Somehow, he'd known what Vivian was planning and prepared for it. These are lies, Vivian shrieked, her composure finally cracking completely. They're all lying. Lily's been manipulating you all. She's weak, unstable, worthless. She doesn't deserve, Miss Vivian. Lord Huntington's voice cut through her tirade like a blade. You are hereby disqualified from this competition and will be escorted from the premises immediately. Security will also be conducting a full investigation into your illegal activities. No. Vivian's mask had completely shattered now, revealing the twisted person underneath. This is all her fault. She ruins everything. She should have stayed broken after father died. Should have killed herself like she wanted to. The room fell into stunned silence. Even I gasped. She'd never said anything that cruel before. Not even in my previous life. She's been sabotaging me since we were children, Vivian continued, completely unhinged now. Stealing attention, making me look bad. Acting all sweet and innocent when she's really a manipulative little... Enough. Alexander's voice was deadly quiet as he stood. Security, remove her. Now, as security guards moved to escort Vivian out, she turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. This isn't over, Lily. I'll destroy you for this. I'll make you pay. But for the first time in my life, her threats didn't scare me. I stood tall, surrounded by people who had defended me, supported by a man who loved me despite, or perhaps because of my struggles. In my previous timeline, she'd won through murder and poison. This time, she'd been destroyed by her own cruelty, exposed in front of everyone who mattered. After Vivian was removed and the other contestants had retired for the evening, Alexander found me on the terrace. The night air was cool against my flushed cheeks. How did you know? I asked without preamble. How did you arrange all that? Mrs. Whitmore came to me yesterday morning, apparently. She'd been investigating some suspicious behavior. Phones calls made from the manor, attempts to access confidential files. When she realized what Vivian was planning, he shrugged. I may have made a few calls of my own. You protected me. I told you, nothing could change how I feel about you. He moved closer, his hand finding mine. Though I have to admit, I was impressed by how you handled yourself tonight. The woman I fell in love with at the orphanage was kind and gentle. Tonight, I saw her strength. Had I been strong in my previous life, I couldn't remember feeling this confident, this sure of myself. The knowledge of what was to come had changed me, but so had Alexander's love and support. There's something I need to tell you, I said, my heart racing with a wild idea. Something impossible that you'll never believe. Try me. I took a deep breath. This isn't the first time I've lived through this contest. He raised an eyebrow but didn't laugh or dismiss me outright. I know it sounds insane, but somehow I have memories of a different timeline. One where Vivian succeeded in destroying me, where she tried to drug you and... I swallowed hard. Where she killed me when her plan failed. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying my face in the moonlight. That would explain a lot. He said finally. What do you mean? You've been different from the start this time. More confident, more prepared. Like you knew exactly what to expect. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. And there were moments when you looked at me like you already knew me, already trusted me completely. He believed me, or at least he was willing to consider it. I don't understand how it happened, I continued. I just remember dying, and then waking up on the morning the contest started. But I'm grateful. It gave me the chance to be the person I should have been all along. The person you've always been, he corrected gently. You just needed to believe in yourself. 5 days later, Lord Huntington announced the final results to the 3 remaining contestants. But I already knew what he would say. Ladies, the choice has been made. Alexander stepped forward, his blue eyes warm as they met mine. Miss Lily, would you do me the honor of accepting my proposal? Yes, I whispered, then stronger. Yes, I would be honored. He slipped a stunning sapphire ring onto my finger, the same ring from my memories, but this time it felt right, earned through my own strength rather than survival. After the ring was on my finger and the congratulations had died down, Alexander led me out to the manor's rose garden. The night air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers, and fairy lights twinkled overhead like stars. I have something to confess, he said, taking my hands in his. Something I should have told you earlier, but I wanted to wait until after everything was official. My heart skipped. What is it? This contest, all of it, was mostly for show. He looked almost embarrassed. The board of directors and extended family needed to be satisfied that my choice was suitable. There were whispers about fortune hunters and inappropriate matches. My grandfather felt that a formal competition would silence any criticism. I stared at him in amazement. You mean, I'd already chosen you, Lily, months ago. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. I've been in love with you since long before this contest began. But how? When? Do you remember the day at St. Margaret's orphanage when little Marcus had his panic attack? I nodded, the memory clear. The boy had been triggered by something that reminded him of his mother's death. I was there for a board meeting. I saw you in the courtyard with him, the way you sat with him, talked him through breathing exercises, shared your own experience with grief. You turned your pain into something that could help someone else. His eyes were soft in the moonlight. That's when I knew I was completely, utterly in love with you. Then why didn't you just ask me out? Why go through all this? Because I was terrified you'd reject me, he admitted. You were so genuine, so different from the women in my usual social circle. I wasn't sure someone like you could love someone like me. The contest gave me time to show you who I really was, beyond the money and the title. All this time, all this competition and fear, and he'd already chosen me. In both timelines, the outcome would have been the same, if I'd just been strong enough to be myself. Welcome to the family, my dear, Lord Huntington added warmly. Though I suspect Alexander chose you long before tonight. As we walked out of Huntington Manor together, I marveled at the impossible second chance I'd been given. I didn't understand how or why I'd returned to that morning weeks ago, but I was grateful beyond words. The frightened, downtrodden girl who'd entered this contest in my previous life was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who knew her own worth, who had faced her demons and emerged stronger, who had found love, not through competition, but through being genuinely, authentically herself. And this time, when Alexander whispered that he loved me, I knew exactly what to say back. I love you too, all of you, even the parts that orchestrate elaborate schemes to protect the people you care about. He laughed, the sound warm and free. Guilty as charged. Though I prefer to think of it as being prepared. Prepared for what? For spending the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how extraordinary you are. As his lips met mine under the starlit sky, I knew that whatever force had given me this second chance, I would spend every day proving worthy of it. Not just to Alexander or his family, but to myself. The girl who had once contemplated ending her pain had instead found a way to transform it into strength. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. There will.